Pam Bondi shouldn't make it past 5 o'clock tonight leading our DOJ. The American people have no confidence anymore in her. That's particularly rich from Letitia James, right? Knowing what she did and what she put the Trump family through. We know who was living in her Virginia house. It was her, and it was her niece, who's a failed OnlyFans model. Lindsey, Pam Bondi, the American people have a lot to say about this case. Both of you should be fired. You're amateurs. You're amateurs. In letting this get to this point, we're almost coming up on midterm season. We're certainly almost halfway through Donald Trump's first term. He's potentially going to be lame ducked if Mike Johnson and Thune can't continue to keep their majorities through midterms. And now we have amateur hour at the Department of Justice.
So Judge Cameron Curry ruling that the appointment of an interim U.S. attorney, Lindsey Halligan, was invalid. Our correspondent Mark Meredith is reporting live on this breaking news. He's got brand new details out of Washington for us. Hi, Mark.
Sandra, I sure do. Good afternoon to you. Well, the Justice Department's case against both the former FBI Director James Comey as well as the New York Attorney General Letitia James was already facing some serious scrutiny. And today's ruling means, at least for now, both cases will be dismissed. But we are waiting to see if the Department of Justice may try to do this again. Comey was indicted back in September, accused of lying to Congress. The charge had that statute of limitations, meaning there was only a small window left for this case to be brought. And Comey had pled not guilty. His legal team had claimed the DOJ.
This is a key piece of the puzzle here and why I'm making the case that Pam Bondi must be fired. Why did this case that was slam dunk against James Comey get this far along in the timeline and take more than 12 months to file and to prepare for, and then to sling some second-rate attorney on top of it before the expiration date? Why? Why? This is one of the most high-profile cases that we knew that Trump's DOJ was going to prosecute on, and now it gets thrown out. Embarrassing. And Pam Bondi shouldn't make it past 5 o'clock tonight leading our DOJ. The American people have no confidence anymore in her. That's for sure.
Had made a number of mistakes, including that the person bringing the case, Lindsey Halligan, as you mentioned, should not have had the job. A federal judge agreeing today, writing that Halligan, the interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, had secured this indictment unlawfully because she was unlawfully serving in this role. She was also facing questions about what materials the grand jury saw and whether a final indictment had actually been presented appropriately for a vote. Also in Virginia, but down in Norfolk, the DOJ was charging Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, with mortgage fraud. The government had claimed she was able to secure a favorable rate on a second home down there, but she had not filed the proper paperwork, basically had lied on that paperwork, and that she had never occupied it as a primary or secondary residence. Basically, they accused her of using it as a rental property, but she got a lower mortgage rate. She had pled not guilty to those charges while she was down in Norfolk, and she had also been quite vocal, saying that this was a political prosecution and that she felt that she was being singled out because of her previous actions against then-candidate Trump after he had left office.
That's particularly rich from Letitia James, right? Knowing what she did and what she put the Trump family through. We know who was living in her Virginia house. It was her, and it was her niece, who's a failed OnlyFans model. So we know Letitia James lied. It was a slam dunk case. We know that James Comey lied to Congress. That was a slam dunk case. Pam Bondi, you have failed the American people. We want you fired. Unbelievable that this is
2021. So what's next here? Well, the Department of Justice will have a chance to say what they think of the judge's ruling, whether they're going to be pushing for an appeal, and whether or not that they would still try to bring any of these additional cases here. Lindsey Halligan, as I mentioned, is still being questioned about whether or not she is serving appropriately in this role. As you see her right here on her screen, Halligan is likely to have plenty to say as well. Yeah. There have been some questions about her lack of prosecutorial experience before this case, but the Department of Justice also making it very clear that they want to see these people brought to justice. They felt that there had been wrongdoing here, and we'll look to see what their official comment will be. My colleagues have also reached out to the White House. I'm sure they're going to be reacting in real time today.
Oh, they should be reacting. And off of this guy's comment with Lindsey having a lot to say about the case, Lindsey, Pam Bondi, the American people have a lot to say about this case. Both of you should be fired. You're amateurs. You're amateurs. In letting this get to this point, We're almost coming up on midterm season. We're certainly almost halfway through Donald Trump's first term. He's potentially going to be lame ducked if Mike Johnson and Thune can't continue to keep their majorities through midterms. And now we have amateur hour at the Department of Justice. This is despicable. And if Donald Trump doesn't fire both of them immediately, then we should put Donald Trump on notice, because the American people have had enough of the deep state deep stating. That's what that's exactly what this is. These are Virginia judges that were slanted to the Democrats. We knew that they had an uphill battle, even though they were easy cases, and now they're tossed. So Pam Bondi, refile this week before you get fired tonight. How's that? I know the timeline doesn't make sense, but I'm just so pissed I'm seeing sideways, because this is ridiculous. Ridiculous that we're here.
As well. Sandra.
And we are here. We'll be on that. Mark Meredith, thank you very much. John.
You bet.
All right, let's bring in Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley. And to kick us off here, I'm reminded that the charges against Comey and Letitia James were ratified by the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, in this ratification that's signed by her, saying, I hereby exercise the authority vested in the Attorney General by law to ratify Ms. Halligan's actions before the grand jury, and her signature on the indictment returned by the grand jury. I mean, did the judge take this into consideration? Can the judge still throw out the cases if they've been ratified by the Attorney General?
He can, in the sense that novelty is not good when it comes to criminal indictments. And there was a lot of novelty in the final day to get this indictment through. They were right up against the clock. And particularly with Comey, they had rejected one of the counts. And so Halligan sort of put together the other two counts rapidly and then submitted that. Now, she and the Department of Justice say that they showed that to two of the jurors, including the foreman, but that the grand jury had approved those two counts. But the biggest problem that the judge saw here is Halligan herself. And this is something that a number of us raised when the indictment first came out. Yeah. Under federal law, the president has 120 days to use an interim U.S. attorney, an acting U.S. attorney. That time was effectively used up by her predecessor. And reportedly, he was shown the door because he had misgivings about some of these charges. So the judge here is dismissing without prejudice. So
again, Turley just gave us a really big piece of this puzzle, right? That the predecessor to Lindsey dragged his feet and then found Jesus in his morals, his legal morals, while using up all of the time, right? Almost to the day for James Comey to be indicted to Congress. And by the way, isn't it also cute that there's a time frame associated with lying to Congress so that it's just effectively wiped if, a certain number of days goes by? They didn't offer that benefit at all. I could tell you that to the January Sixers. There's no doubt about that. They didn't offer that to Steve Bannon, right? At all. Or any of Trump's executive team from the last time through. They weren't giving any benefit of the doubt. So, yes, you should be refiling Pam Bondi. And at this point, you're basically, Pam Bondi, in charge of the Department of Injustice. Because the American people can't think of a case that was obvious to persecute and prosecute that you've done. Not one. That's where we're at right now.
In some ways is a small victory in that this is not the end of the prosecution of James Comey or Letitia James. The question is whether and how they will cure this problem.
What do you believe is, what are we watching for next in all of this, Jonathan?
Well, we're going to wait to see, I think, and we're going to have the answer very soon, whether the Department of Justice is going to go back to the grand jury and try to sort of clean this one up. The key is going to be the status of the U.S. attorney. And that's going to be an issue which they're going to have to address. The court here is saying you simply didn't have this authority. Now, the Justice Department has some good faith arguments that the reading of that law is wrong and that it impedes upon the president's authority. But I think a lot of judges would have raised the same concern. The general view has been that you sort of get one bite at the apple. You've got 120 days.
So we just got this statement in from Letitia James, who said, "I'm heartened by today's victory and grateful for the prayers and support I have received from around the country. I remain fearless in the face of these baseless charges as I continue fighting for New Yorkers every single day." Well,
these aren't baseless charges, Letitia. It's literally an administrative lie that's easy to prove, and that Lindsey should have been able to easily prove, but clearly wasn't. So no, Letitia, that's just PR spin. We all know that you're full of bullshit anyways. And in this instance, Lindsey and Pam Bondi are full of bullshit as well.
I'm not sure if that will stand if the DOJ finds a way to cure these charges and or the situation and refile the charges. But what would they need to do, Professor, to cure this problem?
Well, first of all, Letitia James might be celebrating a tad too early.
Exactly.
The problems here are not with the charges themselves, but essentially with the cop, or in this case, the prosecutor. So the court is not saying that she was innocent of these charges. The court is simply saying that the person who signed off on the charges didn't have authority to do that. So the obvious thing here is to get someone who is lawfully in a position to perform this role. Usually after 120 days, the district court appoints someone as the replacement. They're going to have to work this one out. It's rather uncharted territory here to make sure that the next person who signs is going to be beyond these types of questions. They could also appeal. You know, they're already past the original date, but the argument is that they do have a right to go back to the grand jury. So they may just appeal and say, look, we think we have a good argument here that, yes, there's that 120 days, but we have some rather novel sort of shifts that occurred here that we believe.
You know, all of this is preventable. Again, going back to the timing of this, that Pam Bondi allowed the predecessor to Lindsey to drag his feet, and then he's off, having used 95% of the time that we had to be able to get Comey in front of a judge. So, you know, just translate this to the business world, that at this point, progress updates were non-existent going up to Pam Bondi, meaning she's not asking for them from the predecessor. And then all of a sudden, we're just, you know, running around like a chicken with our head cut off before this timing is completed. So Pam Bondi owns this. It's Lindsey's an amateur. Pam Bondi, you need to be fired. There's no reason why you can make a case to me that she should make it past tonight, being employed at the Department of Justice. There's just no case.
Do not trigger that final date, and that we had the ability to use Halligan in the way we did.
Jonathan, we're just getting a statement from the DOJ, which says it is reviewing options now. And we're also being told that the DOJ literally found out when we did, and they are now going over all the different scenarios. Your reaction to that?
Well, it's fitting because everything about this indictment seems to be rather rushed and improvisational. You know, when the Comey indictment came down, I noted that it seemed sort of disjunctive. I mean, what had happened is they took out this count, and the other two counts didn't exactly fit neatly together. And you got a sense of how quickly they had to get this through. And that, I think, sat badly with this judge. You know, when we're talking about criminal prosecutions, judges really require great specificity and adherence to these procedures. And so I think that the Trump administration may have some, heavy lifting to do if they take this on appeal. But an appeal is an option, and they can seek review as to whether this rule has been too narrowly construed.
Yeah.
You know, at this point, if the Department of Justice doesn't refile, then I don't know what we're doing at this point, because again, the Department of Justice has done nothing as far as America First and MAGA are concerned in getting some of these individuals that are just slam dunk cases in front of judges and behind bars. And that includes Hillary, right? That includes Mayorkas. That includes Chris Wray. And obviously those cases are starting to get movement down in St. Lucie, Florida, with that federal judge. And I think we're going to have a little bit more positive story with that. So let me know. Do you agree with my statement that Pam Bondi and this amateur hour lawyer need to both be fired immediately, and the Department of Justice needs to put in an interim and refile this paperwork and get James Comey and Letitia James to face justice? Because these were easy cases. Easy. And we're now, 14, almost 15 months into Trump's term. We only have 24 months, and nothing's guaranteed after that because, again, Trump can be lame ducked in the midterms. Let me know your thoughts, and if you haven't subscribed yet to America First Alerts, please do so. We'd love to have you come along for more stories and commentary just like this.